Hello and welcome to this Ibrox It's Your Rangers podcast. And every so often, we manage to secure an hour or so of a former player. We managed to secure a former player for a wee chat. My name's Scott Patterson, and as always, you're welcome to this big interview. And I'm really pleased to say that joining us for this big interview is Kevin Thomson. Hello, Kevin. How are you?
Hi, mate. Yeah, all good. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, nice. Thanks for finding the time to join us.
I think when people stop asking you to come on these things is the time that you need to worry. So it's never an issue to give up some time to speak to you boys.
Absolutely. So we're going to speak to you about various different things tonight. Where you are now as person, manager, however you want to go there. And we'll do a bit about your time in the training centre and, of course, when you played with the club. But I think I'd like to sort of rewind it right back to Kevin Thomson, the wee boy. Why a footballer? What made you be a footballer?
So I suppose answering your question, hopefully I'll give you a good answer. Going right back, I suppose the kind of Kevin Thomson growing up, brought up in Peebles, and a kind of family boy, really, a country boy, working class family. Like to think that my humbling roots really and my upbringing has made me the person that I am. And you get life lessons off of loads of different people that are influential in your life as you move forward. Because I suppose what you know at 37 isn't what you know when you're getting opportunities to go up the park and get up to Negid, or opportunities to go in boozers, etc. And you're needing good pals and good guidance. So it was starting off at Peebles really as a kind of, I don't know if people would call us chukters or no, but a kind of country boy, but proud of my kind of upbringing and the livelihood I suppose I had when I was young. Do you know what I mean? Like mum and dad looking after us, traveling all over the country to give us opportunities to play. So I now feel their pain because I've got two young kids myself that I'm like taxi service, stroke dad, stroke coach, stroke. It just feels like
taxi driver.
I just walk on me like I'm the doormat, really. But I love every minute.
Yeah, and so it's funny you mentioned about your parents looking after you. I think everyone who follows you on social media and maybe follows you via your KTA arrangement, you've obviously got the academy now, so you know the importance of parents in a young footballer's life, sort of taking them places, whether it's training, matches, special occasions. So you appreciate that, and I think that it sort of speaks to your point how you never took it for granted as such so early in your life.
I suppose you do. I think when you're immature and you hopefully be able to like look back fondly on mum and dad and the commitment that they gave. You know what I mean? I've obviously been a Peebles boy and I played at Hutchie Vale for I think probably 5 or 6 years in my kind of youth before obviously I signed for Coventry. Because obviously the kind of grassroots in the pro academy game was different from when I got brought up. But the one thing I would pride myself on, and I think my mum and dad would be proud of it, is like being humble and respectful. And that was a big part of my team talks when I was at Kelty. So I didn't just say it lightly. Do you know what I mean? I'm saying that to 20 guys in the changing room, and I believe that I know you cannot please everybody, especially when you one day get lucky enough to play for a club like Rangers. You've got to understand in the industry that we're in that people will not like you. But the people that matter to me are the ones that I respect their opinion, and I think they're the ones that if you were to ask 100 people that are quite close to Kevin Thomson, they would say that, you know, I'm a working class boy, a hard working lad, I'm a grafter, but I'm humble and respectful. And listen, I cannot be who I am without having the nasty streak within me and that competitive edge. But when it comes to being the person that I am, minus the football, I'd like to be classed as a humble, respectful lad.
And listen, I think a lot of people think that you kind of started at Hibs. I think a lot of people remind you with the funky haircuts. But of course, you and I both. But I think a lot of people maybe sort of miss the fact that you actually started off, if you like, down south at Coventry. How did that move come about?
Well, because obviously we got brought up in an environment when we were younger that like grassroots was the be all and end all, really. So Hutchie Vale they still got a good reputation, not quite as good as they obviously did back in the day, but there's obviously loads of fast growing boys club. You mentioned one obviously before we started, Geardog. So there's Geardog was a team that I'd never heard of when I was a kid, really. Do you know what I mean? But we've got a lot of kids that come from Geardog and a lot of talented kids as well. So like clubs like Edinburgh South that my kids both played at grassroots before they went into boys club, like one of the fastest growing clubs in Scotland. They never even existed really when I was a kid. So I suppose the path that we had was Hutchie Vale would probably replica what a Rangers or Celtic or a Hibs or a Hearts or an Aberdeen or kind of one of the bigger pro academies as such, because they were kind of headhunting the kind of best talent, not just for obviously Edinburgh, for maybe through the west or down in the borders or whatever. So I suppose my upbringing to that then never actually gave me an opportunity, believe it or not, to sign with Hibs.
Right, okay.
So Coventry, when I was 15/16, had probably the year prior to that, when it comes to that crunch time, had shown quite a big commitment. There was a guy called Richard Money who was the academy director at Coventry at the time, and he used to come up and watch the Hutchie Vale games along with a lot of other scouts, because Hutchie Vale were one of the teams to watch. So a lot of the scouts would go there, your Rangers, your Celtics, your Hibs and Hearts. And I never actually had another option, but actually signed, probably back in the day, a mega deal at Coventry, compared to what the boys were. But what I gave up at Coventry, without telling you figures, like any prive too much, but to try and give you an insight, I gave up a 4-year deal at Coventry with a signing on fee that probably paid way over and above my first 2 years at Hibs as a professional.
Wow.
I'm just trying to do the maths in my head because it's just young. So I then had a mum and dad who knew how big an opportunity I was getting, because Richard Money thought I was a star down there. They treated me like a star. So for probably the year prior to leaving school, I used to fly down at the weekends and play, and I'd go to watch the Coventry first team. Gordon Strachan was the manager at the time, for enough, like Gary Max and all that were there. They were Premier League club, even though they got relegated. Actually, I think the year after I signed, the year prior to me signing, and that was like Robbie Keane's. And
absolutely,
in the boot room with Robbie Keane, they just signed him. They ended up selling him. I think they sold him into Milan when I maybe had left Coventry, but they were a proper big club at the time, like fighting right up the top leagues. So I think people will probably raise a wee eyebrow that I never really had an option to sign for Hibs, Hearts, Rangers or Celtic when I was a kid. I was quite small. And then obviously when I left Coventry, when I found it difficult to settle, to the kind of disgruntlement of mum and dad, knowing the opportunity I was giving up, and I kind of become a wee bit of a bum, a kind of typical teenager where I spent too much time lying in my bed. Came again to the disgruntlement to mum and dad that they wanted me to start getting out, and if I wasn't going to be a footy player, I had to start earning my keep as such. And then I got a phone call out of the blue. There was a guy called George Mackey who was the under-18s coach at Coventry, who was really good pals with Donald Park, who obviously was the youth team coach at Hibs, and had said that, listen, this boy's no bad player. I would get him in if you could. And the Hibs knew all about me because they'd watched, probably the scouts would have watched Hutchie numerous times. And quite a lot of the boys for that Hutchie team signed for Hibs, boys like Whitty, etc., Ryan Hard, I could rattle quite a few off. And then obviously the age band above us were the same. And then before you know it, I got an opportunity to go in and train for a couple of days, and Dad took me in, and then the kind of rest is history, I suppose. It was that was my, I suppose, one door shutting and another door opening, and getting my opportunity to kind of showcase my talent in an environment that, obviously, growing up a Hibs fan, I was already quite excited to go there anyway, knowing quite a few of the boys. And thankfully I managed to grasp my opportunity.
I think it's one thing we see quite a lot of as well, sort of young Scottish talent maybe not getting their opportunity up here and sort of having a crack at it down south. One guy that instantly springs into my mind is the boy Wilson, who's went down to Aston Villa. I know he's had a sort of phenomenal season last season. The obvious concern about losing these guys down over the border is that they almost disappear and pop back up here maybe 6, 7, 8 years time with heavy pockets but not a great deal of life experience type thing, you know?
I suppose it's difficult. I've never been the one to have like a huge opinion on knowing that when you get to 35, every single player, I'm pretty sure, would want to play at the highest level possible, earn as much money as they possibly can, and win as many trophies as they can. And I suppose it's an individual thing, whether you want to get to the end of your career and have played for prestigious clubs and won trophies, or get to the end of your career and have enough money to give yourself some options in life. If you can have both, I suppose would be every young footy player's dream, really. And then if you can maybe have one or the other, some would maybe rather one than the other. I suppose it is a difficult one, because I've seen firsthand the type of money that these young lads, just obviously using Rory as an example, because I had him myself when I was at Rangers, obviously with the 13s. Rory was actually my first team. A great boy, comes from great people, and he's going to a great club. Listen, I'm pretty sure Stevie G will be the first to say, like, Aston Villa are not as big a club as Rangers, but the opportunities that the boys get down there, plus the big contracts that these clubs can afford to pay, it's a difficult one. And then your young player and your families that might find that Rangers is a difficult pathway to break through into the first team might feel as though going down south might actually give them a bigger opportunity. I suppose I'm sitting on the fence a wee bit, because I do understand both ways, and I would feel like a hypocrite because I ended up having a no bad career and getting a wee bit of both and being able to win trophies and sample big nights and play for big clubs, play for my boyhood team, and then to have a relationship that I've got with a club like Rangers is extra special to me. I'll always probably do myself a disservice to like think how fondly the Rangers fans think of me, because I probably never felt that when I was a player. I probably felt like I got a massive amount of appreciation when I hurt my knee at Rugby Park, like actually how much I did bring to the party. And I suppose later on in life, when I go back to Ibrox and I went back to the academy, it genuinely was. It was back of the throat stuff, how humbling it is to know how much the fans did think of you. And I'm not so sure you get that at a lot of clubs. So no. It's I know I like a waffle, but I suppose it's like me caring about all the kids. I'm desperate for Rory's, your Leons, your Lowrys, all the boys in the academy that are getting opportunities. And it doesn't matter to me if they're at Hibs, Hearts, Rangers or Celtic. I want to see young Scottish talent doing well, because I'm passionate about it. And I also understand how cutthroat it is, that if you don't succeed and you don't take the opportunity sometimes when they do present themselves, that sometimes you can almost cut your own throat at times, because it's such a difficult industry.
Interesting to hear you talk about the injury at Rugby Park. We'll come to that a wee bit later on. I think it was a game changer for your career. Completely changed your direction, sadly. We'll come back to it later on. So you rock up at Hibs. You're there with, I think what Hibs fans will probably look back as some sort of golden generation with all the obvious guys. Stephen Whittaker, of course, who came to Rangers later on. Gary O'Connor was in there. Riordan. Your mate Bruni was there as well. Who I think we'll speak about maybe as this goes on. How did you find it in there? I mean, you know yourself, you were a young lad, but do you know what I mean? The focus was on you at that point, because I mean, you were flying, good group of Edinburgh lads, and you were all doing very well at that point.
I try and present to parents when they come to my academy that, like, I think you've got a ceiling as individuals, whether you want to be fast, whether you want to be good at golf, or whether you want to be a football player. I think if you're a grafter and you're giving 110% and you get a bit of luck in life, because I think we all need that no matter what industry you're in, you'll reach your ceiling. I think there's a lot of talented people that didn't reach their ceiling because of a bit of bad luck or bad choices, or maybe what I would call them geysers a wee bit, that kid on, they're giving 110%, but they aren't really. So they might have the talent, but then it's not backed up with the other bits. So when I think back to my career, I didn't overly think about it much, and I suppose that's why I maybe enjoy doing these things, because it brings back good memories. Is that that group were ultra talented, I think, but at the same time we got massive luck, because Hibs went through a transition where Bobby Williamson had to take a lot of money off the wage bill, had to get a lot of players. You could argue that the young crop were maybe better, and they maybe proved that they were better, but to get that opportunity, you had to have, in my opinion, a door open, and the financial door was a door that opened for the young players. Do I think we would have all had good careers? Aye, but it might not have been at Hibs, and it might not have quite worked out the way it did. And the next part is, it's really daunting for young players to go to first team changing rooms. But see, when you go with 5 or 6 of your pals, and you have to go on a team bus and
young team,
split it 100%. It makes sense. But so I look back at some of the, and obviously we're going to speak about some of the shite luck, I suppose, that I had, to put it politely. But I would say, looking back, leaving Coventry, getting an opportunity going to Hibs, knowing some of the boys in there, the type of personality I was when I was younger, I needed to feel comfortable in my surroundings. I had a bad experience at Coventry, so it scarred me a wee bit. So I had to go somewhere that I knew friendly faces. And then it was the same, really. We had swagger, we could back it up. But the transition for a youth team changing room and at the first team changing room at Easter Road, obviously, because East Main's never existed, I do think your O'Connors, your Riordans, who were ultra talented, top players, and then the next generation of kind of me, Whitty and Scotty. But then people forget, and I'm not just mentioning because of my assistant, but my brother-in-law, Kevin McDonald, kind of was like lots of talented players. Then the next batch was Jinky McCluskey, Jamie McCluskey, Stephen Fletcher's, like really talented conveyor belt players. So we kind of all ended up in that first team training daily together as pals, we weren't all best pals, but there was a camaraderie that, in my opinion, you sometimes get for that 16 to 18 when you're a youth team player, and they're your type of pals that become pals for life. And you never ever forget. And then sometimes when you move to different clubs, you meet loads of associates and a lot of great lads and brilliant teammates, but you maybe only see them once every 5 or 6 years, and you struggle to stay in touch. But normally your youth team pals, or you sometimes grow that special bond. And same again, waffling, I'm going to keep on saying it because I'm trying to hopefully paint a good picture, a good insight. But I do think that was, on all of the boys' part, a bit of luck. And listen, we all had different careers, and people will have their own opinion of how successful each individual was. But I do think, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of the good Hibs fans that look back in that period under Mogga, the fast-flowing football we played, a lot of homegrown players, probably never happen again, was hopefully a good part of the club's history.
So I want to fast forward a little bit to, and listen, the reason you're here, to be perfectly honest with you, January 2007, and there's rumours of Rangers looking at two guys along the M8, and of course we were very, very much interested in bringing you along to Ibrox, and I think at that point there was probably quite a strong interest in Scott Brown as well. Couple of things. I think in the first instance, I'd like to know how you how you felt when you found out about the interest. Do you think that there was a real interest in bringing Scott Brown along as well? And how would you feel if maybe the both of you had rocked up Ibrox back then?
I suppose because we were obviously joined at the hip at the time, and we went through the kind of 6 or 8 weeks, whatever it was, with the kind of link with every team in the country, I suppose, or every team in Britain, should I say. And we were probably back page of the papers near enough every other day. So, yeah. And obviously we had shared the flat together, me and Scotty. We had kind of come through the youth team together. We were would warm up together. We were kind of almost holding hands, if you know what I mean. So I think in a fairy tale world, even though we're both probably no naive to think that could just happen, if you know what I mean. But we probably were when we were. Never really had a worry in the world. We just loved playing footy and trying to be the best we could. And obviously we did do everything together. So when I think a lot of people probably know, but to give it, I genuinely felt that Walter wanted Scotty more than he wanted me, and I felt Gordon wanted me more than he wanted Scotty. So it's ironic to think that we both obviously ended up in a different directions. But I suppose it was a unique but frightening, exciting, I suppose loads of words experience, because you were, Tony Mowbray was obviously at West Brom at the time, and he's on the phone every night saying, why do you want to go to Rangers or Celtic? You come in here, you go to Rangers or Celtic, all due respect to the teams, but you need to play them 4 times a season, and you need to go to the pitches. And he says, like, we'll be in the Premier League, we're sitting top of the Championship, do you know what I mean? You'll be a Premier League player in 5 months' time, and you'll rip it up here. So it's somebody that I had massively respected, just kind of twisting your ear a wee bit, and then you've got Walter on the phone with his kind of deep voice that I never knew Walter that well at the time. I think myself every time he phoned me. And then you've got Gordon, who obviously everybody knows what Gordon's character's like. He's got personality. He's always trying to take the piss out of you, basically. So I was a wee bit on edge, trying to watch my P's and Q's. And we also had other managers on the phone as well, that were obviously at different clubs in England. So it was, I suppose, daunting was probably the right word, and probably no wanting to make a mistake and do the wrong thing, or tell anyone the wrong answers, I suppose, when they were asking that they felt their club was the right one for you. I did think, probably, didn't quote me on the time, but a week to 10 days prior to actually signing for Rangers, I genuinely thought we were both going to go to Celtic.
Really, yeah?
Aye. I thought we thought the deal was done. The Willie Mackay, who was obviously our agent at the time, had said that Celtic had agreed a £5 million deal for the 2 years. We had agreed personal terms. We knew what contracts we were getting. We were getting identical contracts effectively, because it was like a joint package. So we had went to the Man United game when Nakamura scored for 35 yards and sat in the director's box, and we're kind of Peter Lawwell's, the club's kind of special guest on the night, and it looked like everything was not signed and sealed, but it was a matter of just dotting the I's and ticking the T's, really. So to then a week or whatever it was later to finish training one day, to have a text message off Mr. Petrie to say to come up and see him, to then tell me that he'd accepted a deal, which was a difficult thing for Mr. P to say. Anyone that knows him, he's a man of few words, and let's stand and negotiate a fiver off you. I had a brilliant relationship with him, and I think the world of him. Even though trying to get a pound off him was like trying to get a blood out of stain. But at the same time, I have massive admiration for him. I go back a long time, but he kind of grumbled at the thought of they'd accepted a deal, and I genuinely, if I'd had an opportunity to put a bet on who that deal was off, when he told me that he'd accepted a bid, I would have said Celtic, because I genuinely felt that Celtic were the team that were pushing the hardest for me, the way Gordon spoke to me. So madness to think that he turned around and told me it was Rangers, and to be honest, it's no doing any of the clubs a disservice, it's just how I felt as an individual, how they were kind of chasing us, if you know what I mean. And I was over the moon. He said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go. He says, well, there's a there's an opportunity to meet the doc and Martin Bain, who's obviously the chief executive at the time at Livingston, and you can go and do your medical. He's like, do you not want to go home? Do you not want to think about it? Listen, you didn't need to go. We didn't really want you to go. But and I was like, nah, obviously everybody knows, it was common knowledge that me and John Collins were going to get on very well, and it just felt like the opportunity. The opportunity of bubble. And listen, the harsh reality is, whether it's right or wrong to say, it was the option that was presented me at that given time, and I'm not saying if it wasn't the Rangers, if it was somebody else, I wouldn't have said no, but I was just that desperate not to leave, because listen, everybody knows I love Hibs, and I'll never ever say any different, whether Hibs fans like that or they didn't, but it was just an opportunity that felt like everything was bubbling up, and it just felt right to move. And listen, I think anyone that understands football, for the 3.5-4 years I was there, the achievements that we managed to achieve in that time was the right decision. And now when I look back, it was 100% the right decision to move.
What was it like playing for Walter Smith, Kevin?
Special. He's a special man. Find it difficult speaking about him at times, because he's a big part of my life. He's a big part of how I like to present myself. He's I just think when you play for a club like Rangers, and I know you guys and all the fans across the world are like, you cut them open a blue blood, that's non-negotiable, and anyone else is second, and the only team that matters is Rangers. The one thing I would say is Walter's exactly like that, but the class and the dignity and the prestige that he carried himself, and the respect that he had of every other club, which 99.9% of fans didn't like Rangers, or any other club doesn't like Rangers.
Yeah.
But I think for people to respect Walter and like Walter just shows you how special a man he was.
And I've seen bits and pieces from other players that were in and around the dressing room when he was there. And I think he was always very careful at keeping maybe the younger group, if you like. He had a selected group of older players that I think he relied on quite often. I think he was very smart with how he kept the younger guys in check and both feet firmly on the ground.
Oh, there's without doubt that if you ever got carried away underwater, you would, especially me, you would know about it. And that's I suppose his biggest trait. That I would say like about Whitty, because he's a good mate of mine, but me and Whitty are totally different characters, and Walter knew quickly, without actually having to do anything, just his knowledge and understanding people and traits, that I could have two barrels and he could give me the hairdryer right in my face, and I would react to it, and I would bounce back for it. Whereas a Whitty, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying it, if he was a different character, and Walter would know fine well that if he was to do something like that to Wits, he wouldn't get the right reaction off it. And Wits was a wonderful player, and he probably didn't need to give Wits it, but like any Rangers player and any football player, we will have plenty of bad games, and you have plenty of times where you feel as though you're off the boil a wee bit, and your form's a wee bit unwanted, and sometimes as a player, if I was maybe getting a rollick in and other players want to contribute, I think, why are they no bloody getting the rollick in, if you know what I mean? But I learned to understand just how special he was at man management, because people like Baz and Marcel and certain ones could have that rollick in, and there was other ones that, I'm using White because he's a good mate of mine, I'm not going to need to say any other names, but there was loads of different personalities within the group.
Yeah.
That the Walter hairdryer certainly wouldn't have worked, and he was meticulous in knowing Andy's timing, when to give that rollick in and when to know, and when to tell you how wonderful you were, and when to give you a kick up the backside. So he was, for me, the most special man I've met in my whole career, just in how much class and how much respect people have for him.
Do you think that you learned a lot? I mean, I appreciate you've learned a lot from him as a being, as a person, how you conduct yourself. We know that you're currently out of work. Do you think that for your perspective as being Kevin Thomson, the manager, was there wee bits of his persona that you tried to adapt within yourself for when you're doing your role?
I think so. I think you the one thing I always held on to thinking that I could be a good manager is when I started to get that wee bit older, and I went down to Middlesbrough, and then obviously I felt like I was on my way out. I knew I was on my way out. I couldn't do what I wanted to do, and I knew I couldn't do what I used to be able to do. I still felt as though I was a good player and I could play at a good level, but the demons in my head were telling me that I wasn't the Kevin Thomson that was 23, 24, 25 when I felt like I could do whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And Middlesbrough was a hard one because I never really recovered, but when I got back to Hibs and I went in with Pat Fenlon, it always used to stick that at Hibs and Dundee in the tail end of my career, that last 2 or 3 years, the younger players in the changing room, even the older players in the changing room, used to always say, "Tom, we'll see when you become a gaffer, go and just be the way you are now." And I thought, well, and I kind of always felt, obviously I was a captain at different clubs, and always felt like I was a leader by example rather than this big angry, you know, I put my foot in, everybody knows how aggressive I was, and I was like that in training, but no aggressive verbally, if you know what I mean. It wasn't really a trait of mine like a baller and shower, and I keep it the same as a manager. But I think when I get angry, people know when I'm angry, and I probably didn't want to be angry, but it's a natural thing. So I think off the back of Walter, off the back of Gordon, off the back of Tony, off the back of Bobby Williamson, the managers of Pat Fenlon's, I could name a lot of them. Like Donald Park when I was youth team manager, you know, I go back to George Mackey's, I go back to Hutchie Vale managers, and then I didn't need to name them. The ones that I maybe never got on as well with, and I didn't quite appreciate as much. I learned a lot for the ones that I felt didn't treat me particularly well. Oh, and by the way, not just me, other players that I've seen that they never treated particularly well, and I always thought when I become a manager, I didn't want to be like what they were like with the players. I want to be like what Walter was like when I first joined Rangers. We had enough players to put 5 teams on the pitch.
Yeah,
good teams. Young there was loads and loads of players, and you looked at Murray Park, and you could genuinely, there was 40 players training some days. I don't know how they managed it, but not once were players late. Not once did players not try in training. Not once did players spit the dummy out and disrespect the players that were playing in the team. And to me, that come from the leadership for Walter. How much respect they had for them, plus how much respect they had for the club. Whereas I've also been at other clubs, without naming them, that like once the manager starts to treat people wrongly, there becomes a wee bit of a divide in the training. If the players are massively respected, it ends up being detrimental to the manager because the players are really popular, they're well respected, they've had big careers, and now all of a sudden they're getting treated like twats. They players look up to these players, and if the team's winning and they're getting the win bonuses and everything's going well for them, then that can sometimes be a great thing. But on the opposite flip of that, when things start to go wrong and then that manager then starts leaning on the older players or the players that he's not treated so well, I feel as though I've learned a lot in my young career really as a manager and as a coach, that some of the worst scenarios I've been in as a player has helped me, in my opinion, grow to, even though I'm only a young manager, I'm just starting out, but helped me grow the tools and the different variety of personalities you need to have as a manager to treat different people.
Yeah. I remember being at Ibrox in March 2008 when you scored your one of 2 goals, of course, that you scored at the club. What's it like to score against Celtic at Ibrox?
Special. It's, I suppose, and it's a selfish thing. I think that the game finished 1-0, didn't it? So it's when you always look back. It's I think if it was 3-2 and you score the winner, if it was 2-1, or even if it's 4 or 5-0 or whatever, and you get in the act. But I think to score in the game finish 1-0, but I probably like to think that I wasn't a selfish player the way I was a team player. But I now understand why Boydies and Coisties never used to pass the bugger in training. That feeling is, and like you mentioned, I never got to sample it very often throughout my career. Do you know what I mean? Like, but to score and to have that 5-second spotlight just on Kevin Thomson,
amazing,
as a special feeling. And listen, I've still got the pictures, and my kids go through wee spells where they think Dad was actually no bad, and then they go through spells where they think I was rubbish. So I've got a few wee things in their mind, don't we? I say that, you've got a long way to go before you can score a winner in Old Firm.
Goodness me, you're absolutely right. And of course, maybe that was the. I think a lot of people unfairly remember you as the guy that nailed Robbie Keane twice in the space of a minute. And I think there was a lot more to your game generally than that. However, if he is still in your back pocket, it would be quite nice if you'd let him out tonight.
Nah, no, listen, I didn't mind it. It's nice, and it was, I suppose, when I look back at that game, and I think a lot of people forget it because of the Robbie Keane tackles, and I got a lot of prestige out of it. I think a lot of people forget that they were coming to Ibrox. We were 7 points clear with a game in hand, and if they'd come and beat us, and obviously all the talk was on Robbie Keane, and
absolutely
had to find a wee bit of form. They went down to 10 men. We obviously Scotty getting sent off. We couldn't quite go over the line. A draw was probably a good result for us because they had to come and beat us. But to then score the way we scored, then obviously all about more ado, even though Boydie should have scored. To then go clear, we're having a game in hand. Like, to me, the tackles were irrelevant. I never gave the tackles a second thought. We went straight away with Scotland and Barry Robson's and your Charlie Adams, etc., who'd obviously been and gone, saying you were fucking boss the game and putting yourself about. But they obviously knew that's what I was. But the only thing I was bothered about was 3 points and making sure that we were another step closer to the title. So even though you look back in different moments in your career, and that's obviously one which makes me laugh when a Celtic fan tweets me to say that you remember for 2 tackles. You know, sometimes it doesn't bother me. Sometimes I think to myself, well, I actually won a few trophies when I was there as well. So when I was winning trophies, you want to win them. So I couldn't have done that bad. But listen, I appreciate the banter, and it's to me, it didn't matter if it was Robbie Keane or if it was somebody else. It was just I was wanting to lay a marker in the game, like I did every game for Rangers. You know, I tried to impose my kind of presence, and I felt that me as a player, that my niche in the market was a lot of players got that extra ounce of energy, wherever that comes from as a Rangers player, because everybody will think, well, you should have that anyway. But sometimes you just need that wee bit of fire in the belly and somebody to go and take somebody on, to get the fans off their seat, or somebody to go and put their foot in, or somebody to maybe skip by somebody and have a shot for distance and sting the goalie's palms. And all of a sudden, you know what it's like, you're a fan, you sit and breathe it every week. And I felt like the team performed far better, and I performed far better when I was really on an edge, and that edge for me was really imposing my power and presence within the game.
Listen, I think it's amazing. I think it's fascinating to hear you speak about it like that as well. I remember lots of the Old Firm games when I was growing up. So I was 28 back then, and I think you always look back at Celtic games at sort of special moments in Celtic games, and we could all rhyme them off. Those tackles always come up when the Old Firm games are on. Always. Do you know what I mean? If it's not sort of Jock Wallace appearing with the sort of battle fever on sort of comment, or old goals that we see previously, the Kevin Thomson tackle on Robbie Keane always appears. And I think you're absolutely right. It almost takes the shine off of the goal he scored that day and how well he played that day. And you know, it's a shame, because I think there's a huge amount more to your game than that. UEFA Cup run. We obviously had a wonderful run in the Europa League last season. Alas, didn't come back with the winners' medal and didn't have the proper opportunity to come back and celebrate it in Glasgow. What was the journey to Manchester like overall? I think we last season we heard a lot about how the team back then almost boxed ugly to get there, which I think is a wee bit unfair on the guys that were involved.
No, I think when I've heard a lot of players and ex-players and other people talk about like trying to compare the two teams and the different, listen, it's impossible. So one thing I tried to say, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart, is that I was just supporting the boys and desperate for them to win. And if it meant that the 2022 team in Seville were the winners and 2018 were forgot about, I know quite well that how important this club is to people, and they never forget any of the players or the teams and the teams that were good. That's why it's a special club. So I think a lot of people think that if you win a treble, you didn't quite, it's a green-eyed monster, you didn't want to see anyone achieve as much as you achieve. Where I was the opposite. I was actually gutted and felt a wee bit sick for them, just how we known a few of the boys, and by the way, not known a lot of them that well. Obviously I played with Griggsy, who I've kind of been brought up with, played with obviously Steve. But we've been in at the club and getting to meet Ryan Jackson, playing against Ryan, and Scott Arfields, and knowing some of the staff, and actually knowing as a player who thinks back to how much luck and how much effort and how much resolve and just how much dedication and sacrifice you need as a player, or never mind a Rangers player, to give yourself an opportunity that is, you could argue it's almost like trying to win the Euro Millions, getting a European final. And I genuinely thought in 2008 it was impossible. So for the boys to then go and achieve what they achieved last year was remarkable. I suppose looking back, and I've never really watched the game back. I've seen a couple clips. I've got a few photos in my games room that give me wee reminders when I'm in having a game of pool with the boys or whatever. But I suppose the wee difference that I would say is that the current team, who done unbelievably well, were, in my opinion, like off the cuff, they could score at a blink of an eye. And they were a brilliant team with loads of real top players, and they got the credit that they deserve, because I think the fans, the support that they boys had last year was unbelievable. And then take that back to 2008, and it was exactly the same. I think over in Florence, I think going back to, you know, beating Lyon 3-0, and I suppose that's the only wee bit that I would flip when you said I think that's a wee bit unfair, is that that Rangers team in 2008 scored 3 goals in France in the Champions League. It scored 2 goals against Stuttgart in the Champions League at home to start off with 3 points. It then scored 2 against Werder Bremen at Ibrox. It scored 2 in Sporting Lisbon. And I think there's a perception that that team had one shot at goal every single game and won 1-0, which I think is a wee bit unfair. But that's no meaning that then that team was better than this team. I just think that they were both brilliant teams, both got top managers. One had the greatest of all, in my opinion. But I was a voucher for Stevie's team. I was desperate for him to do well. I was desperate for the boys to do well because I wanted the club to do well. And then when Gio come in, I was desperate for Gio and his staff to do well, because I know how much luck and I know how much you put your reputation on the line as an ex-player for an opportunity that hot seat. And if it doesn't work out for you, you kind of almost tie your reputation. So I was desperate for the boys to go over the line, and in my opinion, like, it was gut wrenching just quite how it finished. Then.
Yeah, listen, it was a horrendous way to end both of these cup finals. Indeed, 2008 and last year was a bit of a challenge. Rugby Park, you mentioned it off the bat. Kilmarnock, we go there and win, convincing win, if memory serves me right. You got a shocking injury, a really bad one. I just wonder, with hindsight, if you think you were maybe, know what you know about injuries now and how medical science has changed since then, if you think you were lucky to play to a standard again after that injury being so poor as it was.
I always find it hard to speak, because I always feel as though, like, when you speak about you as a person, and it's sometimes nicer when other people say it, but I've always been hopefully humble in my opinion and respect. I'm not saying I'm better than anyone else, just my personal opinion was that what I managed to achieve in my career was done through having to jump through a lot of hoops.
Yeah.
I mean, broke my leg at Middlesbrough 4 times, 2 cruciate ligament injuries before I was 24. And obviously when I was growing up, probably 16, 17, when you done your ACL, it was like the worst thing in the world. So for me at 23 at Rugby Park, to know lying on that pitch that it felt like I'd done exactly the same in my left knee as what I'd done in my right knee. And I genuinely, like, it took me not just psychologically and mentally to get over the one at Hibs, to then get back to a level where I captained the club at 21, to then earn my move to Rangers, to then grow my stature at Rangers and win over the fans and try and cement yourself in the team and become important to the team, and be value for money, because at that time a couple £1 million was a lot of money, especially a Scottish player going to Rangers. It's a drop in the ocean now. It's, people are paying it for reserve players now, but same again, you cannot compare different, because that's just what the market is. So to hurt my knee at 23 after I'd recovered and I'd worked really hard, not just mentally but physically, I felt I didn't say this lightly because I respect everybody else, but I felt as though I was as good as anyone in the country.
Yeah, you were.
And I could run, I could tackle, I could play. I was really aggressive. I'd done, in my opinion, the work in the middle of the pitch for 2 players, and that's why we could play with Mendez's and Davos and Fergie's, because they couldn't do what I could do. Listen, I couldn't do what they could do, but I knew Barry coming back for his ankle injury, and I remember Sir David saying, he was like, "Who's going to be playing with you?" And I said, "Well, I'm no budging." Because I felt I was becoming the main man. Do you know what I mean? And that's not me saying I was better than Barry or Steve or any of these players, but like the niche in the market that I was creating was, I felt I was becoming a real good player. And then to hurt your knee, it takes you 7 or 8 months to try and recover, and then you do recover. And obviously, I think a lot of people forget that we won the league in the cup, so league and cup double, the season that I signed for Middlesbrough. And I think I played 43, 44 games that year. I think a lot of people forget that normally when you're a Rangers player and you move on, it's either for big bucks or you're kind of surplus to requirements. So to win a double and be kind of have recovered from that horror injury and then kind of rebuild yourself again to try and build on your reputation to then move was, it's hard not to look back and feel a wee bit sorry for yourself in hindsight. Even though I've got no regrets and I'm delighted with the career that I had, but I did feel my talent and my ability was, I don't know if it's the right terminology, but I felt as though underachieved for the quality that I had.
I'd say, it's fascinating to hear you talk about the injury. One of the things that we spoke to Ian Durant previously on the podcast, and one of the things he spoke about was how the battle to get back to a standard of fitness is the sort of the psychological part of that is just as challenging as trying to get your body back to a standard that you can take a 50-50 with Kevin Thomson in the training Monday to Friday. You know what I mean? That in itself can be just as much a challenge as trying to get yourself built up and physically strong.
I think the biggest thing for me, look, everybody's different, and that's why you can never compare. And Durante's injury was shocking. Me used to give me the book every time I seen it.
Absolutely.
Another astute kind of thing that Walter done, you know what I mean, having boys like Coisties and Durante's around us lads and teaching us the tricks of the trade and the standards that's expected of you. You know, like you think of John Gregg being in the training ground all the time and quickly telling you if Saturday's performance wasn't good enough because you maybe only beat St Mirren 4-0. He said I would have took 10 off them if I was playing. And then you had your Sandy Jardins in that, do you know what I mean? And it was a special place to be, and I suppose a real astute, clever wee things that a lot of people didn't see, having people like Durante. But the bit that I would say for me a wee bit different for Durante is the aggression part and me putting my foot in again was the easy part for me. The hardest part was the snowball effect of you've now got 2 screws in both your knees, your body's changing, you're not quite as lean, you're not quite as that split second at elite level, you're not just quite there. So I'd worked really, really hard this summer before I went to Middlesbrough, and obviously I thought I was going to be, I did return as a Rangers player because my mentality was that you win the double, you play well, you get your summer holidays, you work as hard as you possibly can in the summer holidays to be even better next year.
Yeah.
And then you put winning a title and winning a cup and playing the Champions League, you park that straight away and you have a day to celebrate, a day to unwind, and then you're back in the gym grafting again to be even better for the next again season. So the hardest part for me was that the graft bit was easy to get up and do it. The hard part was that my body was failing, and I was having to battle different parts of my body breaking down and starting to feel the aches and pains even at 25, 26. So the hard work within a body that was struggling to cope with that hard work was tough. And statistically, I've never actually looked at it, but there's a reason why I was kicking about for 15 years and only played 350 games. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I've got no disrespect to anyone else, but 350 games nowadays when boys are churning 50, 60 games out a season is not a lot of games really. No. But when you look at probably 2 cruciate ligament injuries, retiring at 31, 4 broken legs at Middlesbrough, 350 games for me was probably no bad achievement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people forget about the injury troubles that you did have when you went down to Middlesbrough. I think it's quite clear that it was maybe not a move that you particularly wanted to see through at that point. Was it something that probably wasn't forced upon you? Did you see maybe a pathway to English Premiership or maybe more first team football at that point?
Well, I don't know if a lot of people will know, but Tony Mowbray had the season prior to me moving to Middlesbrough. West Brom had obviously got promoted. They were in the Premier League, and Tony was back on the phone, and they'd put, I don't know if it was official or if it was kind of unofficial, but they'd put a big bid in, I think in the regions of £5 or £6 million. And I remember Walter pulling me in saying, listen, I know you'll know, West Brom have been on the phone, but the money that they're talking about, no chance. And I was like, I'd heard, and obviously at that time I was playing, I was back fit, I was a big part of the team. I'd recovered kind of from my knee. And the first thing I was thinking about is like, you're almost like, I'm probably 3/4 up the squad in terms of finances and in terms of like deal. I've got 2 years left. The new deal felt as though it should be on the horizon because that's normally what happens. It's the same in the modern day game. You very rarely would let one of your kind of assets and one of your kind of regular starters run down to a year. I know obviously the club have got that at the moment with obviously certain players, but back in the day that was probably less of a thing. If you probably had players that were sellable assets, you would. I've seen, well, even at Hibs, we still had 4 years left on our deal, and then Rod Petrie was ripping up and giving you a new 5-year deal because obviously it bumped your money up and it would give them more bargaining power when it comes to obviously transfer sales. So I suppose when I look back, going to Middlesbrough was that it come out the blue a wee bit on my summer holiday. I had Gordon on the phone, obviously, to say that there was a kind of unofficial list of players going about England that were available for sale.
Right.
Whether that was gospel or no, that's obviously what Gordon had said to me, and I found that a wee bit. I kind of took it like a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
I genuinely didn't think I would obviously be one that would be leaving, But a lot of people will know, and I didn't want to sound like a broken down record as if I've got a wee bit of bad luck, but because I signed in January, your Nazies, your Davises, your Whitakers all signed summer transfer. So I actually signed a 4.5-year deal when I signed for Rangers. But see, if I'd signed in the summer, I would have actually signed a 5-year contract probably for the money that they paid for me. And it would have then meant that I would have had 2 years left on my deal.
Right, okay.
Instead of 1. So see all that other crappy players, I was probably the most vulnerable for the club.
Yeah.
When you look at like that young crop that potentially could go for money. So, and I've never had this as an answer. It's just my opinion of how things worked out. Because I know I was Walter's boy, and I knew how important I was, or I felt how important I was to the club, especially of the previous season, winning the double, like we mentioned. To then feel like things had changed slightly and the goalposts had changed, and all of a sudden the club were quite happy. And to be fair, back in the day, a year left in your contract, when any club could have signed me for free within 5 or 6 months, £2 million was probably no bad money for considering the club had paid £2 million for me. But at the time, I was like a bit miffed that Middlesbrough were able to afford to pay me this contract, and Rangers kind of weren't offering me the contract. So, and obviously, we all know, obviously, in hindsight, in a year's time, the club went through the troubles that they went through. But at that time, we never knew anything about that. So it was a difficult situation. It was kind of like, kind of scratching my head a wee bit. And it was either security at Middlesbrough because of the injuries that I'd had, and it would give me an opportunity to retire and be financially secure, or I was on a good wage at Rangers and I was loving every minute of it. But I was a wee bit miffed that there wasn't a new contract sitting on the table, really. And I'm not blaming anyone, because in hindsight, knowing what happened, obviously 12 months later, I could understand why there wasn't a new contract on the table for me, and the club probably couldn't afford to give me what they probably wanted to give me. So I don't want to sound like a broken down record, but I probably am. Is that it's another scenario in my career when I look back, thinking that I was a wee bit unlucky, because if Rangers had potentially not went through the troubles that they went through, I could have easily been sitting here playing 8, 9, 10, 12 years as a Rangers player.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I think to put it in perspective, you were there at the same time as guys like Davis, who of course has been away and is now back. So it's frightening how that time has passed almost so quickly, and indeed what's happened since 2012 as well. Just quickly on Middlesbrough, how did you find that transition from the goldfish bowl of Scottish football, where you win, you're a legend, you lose, you're out in your arse for weeks? Middlesbrough, Middlesbrough is maybe a bit of a. What were the expectations going down to Middlesbrough is maybe the better question.
I suppose, obviously, because they signed quite a lot of players with big profiles, there was an expectation, obviously, that they were going to try and get to the Premier League. Gordon had said, listen, I'm signing you as a Premier League player. I cannot believe you're available, really. But we were obviously desperate to get the deal done. So I think, and I always feel a wee bit rude sometimes when I speak about Middlesbrough, because, listen, a brilliant club, great facilities, great place to live. We loved it down there as a family, because you mentioned the fishbowl, the expectation of your everyday life is always under the microscope. Whereas in Middlesbrough, you're just another guy in the street, really, down there, and you didn't really get much prestige. There's no real recognition that comes along with being it. Listen, you get recognition, of course you do, and it's a brilliant club, but not at the same degree as what you obviously get walking about the shops in Glasgow.
I can imagine.
And obviously, looking, the game's changed with social media, so the players are they're kind of, it's 24/7 now, isn't it? Whereas there was a reason why I stayed in Edinburgh, because I wanted to take myself away from Glasgow. I wanted to go to work. I wanted to train. I wanted to come home. Everybody will know I'm quite a private guy, and I didn't overly like the limelight. You probably either be pictures of me lifting the trophy somewhere, but I was always at the back of the queue. I was never at the front. I was in changing rooms. If you've seen title winning or cup winning photographs, I'll probably be somewhere up in the top right hand corner, just my wee So I suppose in hindsight, Middlesbrough was a good thing for me as an individual, and the kind of family life that we've got. Jackson was actually born in March. We were playing at St Mirren, and the manager, I'll not tell you the story, but he forgot to take me off when my wife was going to labour. He told me that I had to play because it was an important game, so I teed everything up to jump in the car. Anyway, cut a long story short, we obviously, Jackson arrived, and then I moved in the summer, but to then have a newborn obviously down there and moving away from home for the first time was a challenge. But I have to say, we loved every minute. The bad bit was I wasn't doing there to kind of relocate. As a family, we were doing there to play football.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I suppose the football part, with the bad luck that I had, obviously on the injury front, was I think tarred my reputation with the fans. And I think it's easy for any Middlesbrough fan that probably doesn't like us to say that I was rubbish and I was this and I was that. But I'd like to think if they maybe broke things down and I broke things down and it was a kind of like mutual agreement, like it being a wee bit of bad luck on both parties, you know what I mean, spending that money on me, and I wasn't a kind of an expensive dud, I suppose. But I'm not so sure that was through my talent or through any mad doing, if you know what I mean. I just think it was a bit of bad luck on both parts.
So I think, I mean, it's safe to say the Middlesbrough move probably didn't go as you would have wanted to go for a variety of different reasons. Injury was clearly a problem, and you come back up the road, and it's another spell at Easter Road. You're Dundee, Hibs, and then it finishes in 2016 with a couple of games for Trinent. Retiring, what does that mean for someone so young to be hanging up the boots?
For me, in my head, I'd probably crossed that bridge quite a lot since I was probably 25, 26, 27. I'm not quite so sure my wife would be in agreement that it was something that I was looking forward to. I'm not so sure she was. And to be fair, like I always had this. I think it used to annoy my dad because he knows what I'm like, and he knows that I'm a grafter. And I'd like to think I'm no spoiled, but I'm kind of opening up as such, give you an insight of what I'm like. I probably, the banterish part of me probably was like, I'm going to retire, I'm going to do nothing, I'm going to play golf every day, I'm never going to work, I'm just going to enjoy my life. Mm-hmm. And then 24 hours later, I want a job.
You're bust.
And I can't take the dogs a walk anymore because they can't walk any further. So I think the banter side of me would say that, I'm just going to enjoy my life and I'll just dip my toe in here and there. But I literally done, I think about 2.5 weeks after I left Trinent, I think late October, November type time. Because I'm sure the academy is 6 years come November. And then I just threw myself into the academy because I think a lot of people think, you have a good career, you're this, you're that, you're quite a popular lad or whatever. But every player will tell you, and players that are far better than me, once you retire, some can go straight into having a job, and sometimes the club that they finish it gives them a job off the back of it. So there's actually no gap where you might have a family holiday, but then you've got a job to go straight into. I suppose when I took the chance to go to Trinent as a kind of fairy tale and play with my pal, and it never quite worked out for kind of both parties, it left me a wee bit in limbo, because all of a sudden you've took yourself away from the professional game. You've now not got a club and a kind of whatever, it's maybe no sporting director back in the day, a chief executive that quite likes your mannerisms and what you are and what you bring to the party, and an opportunity to maybe work with a youth team or get a job straight off the back of it. So I suppose it felt a wee bit vulnerable would probably be the right word. And a lot of people think, Kevin Thomson, I suppose I feel as though I'm a wee bit in that position again. Off the back of leaving Kelty, it's probably quite, when I look, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head really, when I think of the scenario of first retiring and having that limbo to start an academy, is probably the same as taking the opportunity to resign at Kelty and taking a wee bit of a risk. Because listen, I could have kept on playing if I wanted to. I did have options to keep on playing, but I'm not going to name any of the clubs that made me offers as kind of player coach or player manager, but it just never excited me. And I didn't want to be that person that got frustrated with football, because I love it. And now there's no a day that goes by that I didn't love football, because my kids love it. I've got the academy. I've had great jobs off the back of retiring. It was a buzz to go back and take the under 13s, even though they're like 12-year-old lads, but I loved every minute of it. Then I moved to the 15s, the 18s, the B team, working for a brilliant club. And now I've got opportunities, unpaid opportunities, I suppose, just being a dad, to go and watch my kids at Hibs because they're both in the Hibs academy. So I suppose I'm one of the kind of teacher's pets that just loves footy, and being involved in any capacity, whether it's watching games, doing the commentary like I've done obviously last night at Ibrox for the West Ham game, is I just love footy, me.
And listen, it's funny to hear you talk about the sort of that. I think it was back then, obviously the coaching took a big priority in your life personally with KTA. But of course, it was back then where you did find yourself being invited back into the training centre at Rock and Howie, and you were quite heavily involved. How did that move come about? How did you feel about it? Was it good being back in the weeds again?
It was brilliant. I suppose, like when you actually, I've not got this gospel, but I think it's reasonably, and I'm sure Graham will not mind me mentioning that the 20s job was actually available. I think it might have been the development job at the time. Somebody had said to me, "You'll be perfect for that," and they'd sent it to me. So I'd text Graham Parks and said, "Listen, mate, hope all's well, blah, blah, blah." It wasn't like it was out the blue, because Graham used to sort my cars. He still does.
Okay.
And like, well, if he doesn't give me a good deal, then I'm sure he'll not mind me saying that either. I'm always trying to haggle him for a, it's like me or people try to haggle him for a fiver. But he's always looked after me. And we just built up a good relationship. I actually used to give Graham my poppy strip all the time. And it's funny, I broke my leg with a poppy strip on at Middlesbrough. I'd done my knee at Rugby Park with a poppy strip on. But Graham liked the poppy strips, they were unique, and I'm thinking I couldn't wait to get rid of them. They were special for them, but not for me. But anyway, when that job first come up, he'd said to me, "Listen, I cannot guarantee anything," because obviously Craig Mulholland, who I never really knew at the time, he's the academy manager. He says, "Listen, I'll put a good word in for you." He says, "What to do is send me your CV." And I was like, "CV? CV?" So I was like, all right. So we were actually in Spain at the time. So I said to my wife, I said, "Listen, I need a CV." I said, "You need to type me something up." And honestly, I might as well have done it on my phone. It was terrible. Didn't know where to start, didn't know what to do, didn't know what to write. Anyway, I'd sent it to obviously Craig, and Craig had mentioned that they had 500 million applicants for obviously the job, as you would expect. And unfortunately, not quite the role that would obviously suit me just now, blah, blah, blah. But if there's any other opportunities, I'll keep you intact. And obviously I'd say to Graham, "Listen, if there's any other opportunities, that might have been a bigger role, but any role would be good." And then I think whatever it was, let's say a year later, Craig had reached out and had mentioned that there was an opportunity to go back. So it was a kind of no-brainer, I suppose. When I could come through, him and Craig Robertson come through and kind of presented to me what the kind of academy does. But to be honest, I wasn't really listening. I just wanted the job. I just wanted an opportunity to go back and kind of lend my, I don't know if expertise is the right word, but lend my knowledge and get my hands dirty and get an opportunity to drive through Postle again, I suppose, and then somebody didn't shoot my car.
One of the things that we get a lot is how the facility at Murray Park is just second to none. It's incredible to go back and forward there to do work every single day. And I want to get your thought on we obviously have the B squad who are going to be taking part in the Lowland League for another season this coming season. And I want you to rely on your coaching expertise. How do you feel giving these guys the opportunity to play competitively at that level as opposed to maybe bounce games in and around the training centre? How does that improve their game, both mentally, physically, just that experience of playing competitively in that fashion?
I think that my biggest, I suppose my opinion, or not my biggest opinion, my thought on it was, because obviously Craig had actually mentioned it to me just no long before I'd left. We were just due to finish up in the summer, and he had mentioned that the Lowland League was obviously going to be a team, and what was my thoughts on it, blah, blah. And my initial thoughts were that depending on the level of Rangers player at that current time and the age band of the player would dictate how the games look. And it's such a difficult thing, and I've not got all the answers, and Craig's not got all the answers either, really, because sometimes you can, depending on the calendar month and depending on how some of these teams do in cup competitions, etc., plus depending on how our first team's doing, to what Gio needs, injury-wise, can then dictate how strong the Rangers team is. Do you know what I mean? So the games can sometimes be a wee bit false, but what I would say is, because there's a lot of ambitious clubs in the Lowland League, it's worked out quite well. The problem is, and I didn't want to do any of the teams a disservice, because I've probably got mates that play with some of them, and I've got the utmost respect for the lower leagues, is that some of the teams aren't quite at the level that would be a good enough challenge for a young Rangers player to then find themselves playing on a Tuesday night, for instance, and then be good enough to then jump straight into Gio's starting 11. And my opinion of the academy is that if the academy is not there to feed the first team, I didn't see the point yet. That's my biggest belief. It's there to make sure that the fans hard-earned cash and Mr. Parks hard-earned cash isn't having to go and recruit a left back or a right back or a centre midfield player, because the academy every now and again can produce one. That's my kind of belief in development foot. And if it's no feeding into the first team, then I get frustrated. Where I did when I worked in there, and I suppose I still do now as a fan. I think the Lowland League now, with Celtic in it, with obviously Rangers in it, with Trinent now in it, with East Kilbride having good pockets, I actually think the Lowland League is very competitive.
Yeah.
I just think there's a level when you get to, and it might just be your Lowries and your Kings now, that you wonder if they've just surpassed the Lowland League. So to find the level of competition that these lads are going to need, the young ones that are just coming in the academy, and some of the ones that are maybe a wee bit behind your Kings and your Lowries, like you look at like your Cole McKinnons and that, I'm not so sure it would have been good for Cole McKinnon playing this year, but him and Tony Weston have just produced brilliant moves. You know what I mean? Part of Thistle in the Championship, full time, just round the corner, can still go in and get their provision in at the club. I think it's a brilliant move for both kids, and it's up to them to go and grasp that opportunity. I just think it's not always perfect, but I'm not so sure it doesn't matter if you had a magic wand, you would ever get it perfect, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I one of the things that we're obviously getting now is how the youth is going to be involved next season. And you refer to Leon King and Alex Lowry. I know King is someone who you're a huge fan of. I think what you now want to know is that how the path for these guys is clear. Is it clear? Are they going to get opportunity? And I think that's, I completely agree with what you're saying. They find themselves almost in no man's land a little bit, maybe not being a starting 11, but way too good for that B squad and that Lowland League setup.
It's a difficult one, because I've always tried to say, and like the parents' evenings I found difficult when I was obviously a coach, and I used to argue with Craig that when the boys become 16, 17, 18, they start to get paid off the clubs, we shouldn't be having parents' evenings. You know what I mean? Like, they're resilient, they need to stand on their own 2 feet. If they're not happy about game time, or they're not happy about X, Y, or Z, or a wee Bobby or Jimmy playing in front of them, then I think the personality that you need to be a Rangers player, they should be chapping on mine and Davy's door and asking themselves, no mum and dad asking. So I found the parents' evenings quite tough, to try and be difficult with the mums and dads to say, listen, it's Rangers. There isn't a pathway. No, why there's no pathway? Because it's difficult. But by the way, if your son's a right good player and he's dedicated and he's got the right mentality, he's got the right desire, he's got the right talent, and then he gets a wee bit of luck, he'll be good enough to play for Rangers. But by the way, if he's no all of the above, because in my opinion, you need it all to play for Rangers. And all the kids get to Rangers because they get a great opportunity, and they might be really strong kids within their age band. And some of them have been in the academy, as you know, for 8, 9, 10 years or whatever. It means nothing to me. That, to me, the bit that matters is that if you think that a club like Rangers, there's going to be an easy pathway or a crystal clear pathway to get into the first team and playing in front of 50,000 every week, then to me you're a bit delusional and you should be somewhere else. Because to play for Rangers, you need to have the talent, you need to have the mentality, you need to nowadays have the athleticism, and you need to be a right good player in your specific position, or else there isn't a pathway. And I think a lot of people get caught up with the word pathway and game times. And to me, to represent Rangers, you need to be fighting every day to be the best. And that's the standard that this club represents. And whether you agree with that or disagree with it, if you disagree with it, the likelihood is Rangers is no for you. It'd be great if it was easy. If it was easy, we'd all do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, and I think that's a bit that when you get equal game time and you get the provision that the Rangers Academy gives to the mums and dads, as you say, mentioning like a lot of mums and dads will have supported the club or have people that support. Now all of a sudden they've got a laddie that plays for Rangers or a girl, and turning up to Murray Park and the prestige that comes along with the umbrella that Rangers represents. I think a lot of them get carried away with that, and they take their eye off the ball, which what really makes you a Rangers player. And it's no Craig Mulholland, it's no Kevin Thomson, it's you.
Yeah,
it's you, your dedication, your sacrifice, your willingness to go that extra yard. I say it to my kids all the time, well, they're listening if you don't want to. If you want to be a Rangers player, you want to play in a telly like dad, see every changing room you sit in at the moment, whether you like it or you don't, you need to be working harder than everybody else. Tough, if you know. And see if you fail giving you your best. They fail because you want to blame somebody else, or you want to blame my coach at the under 13s, or you want to blame my parents evening at under 18s because I wasn't getting the right game. They make excuses. Grab the bull with the horns, graft, sacrifice, and see where it takes you.
I'm going to speak to you about Kelty in a second. You were in and around the training centre when Steven Gerrard and his entourage rocked up. What was that like, being around the training centre when these guys turned up?
It was amazing. I never knew Stevie really when they first come in. I probably hoped that I'd had a wee in, because obviously Gary McAllister was Gordon Strachan's. Yeah. I want to say coach Gaz Pembridge was assistant, I think, or maybe the other way around. But Gaz was obviously there, and he was brilliant for me as obviously a Scottish player and a midfielder.
Yeah.
So I'd hope that obviously like a wee bit of interaction with Gaz would give you a wee bit of interaction with the manager. Obviously I'd played against him in the pre-season friendly under Walter.
Yeah.
So I'd kind of come up against him without really knowing him. And I hope anyway, now that we've built up a good relationship, and listen, he might never text me back ever again, but I hope anyway, and I didn't want this to sound a bit kiddy thing, because he's Steven Gerrard, he's a kind of world-class icon, so to get a text message back, or for him to open his door to you, I think is massive within itself. It's a big deal. So I think he's seen me within the academy, and probably I'd like to think he could sense that it was a challenge for an ex-player, if you know what I mean. There is politics within the academy. There is different things that go on, and by the way, loads of brilliant work. But there's ultimately, like any workplace, there's stuff that you didn't agree with, and there's stuff that
of course
you find challenging. And I think Stevie he did say to me, to be fair, when I sat in front of him, that listen, if I'm going to help you one day sit here, I'll not be able to sleep at night if I didn't try and open the door for you and try and help you and give you the tools to one day work, because I know that's what you want. And then obviously I've been doing to Villa. When I eventually did obviously get through the 18s to the B team, it gave me, I was a wee bit unlucky, to be fair. I feel like kind of the violin should be out for Tom. Because obviously I got through the B team through COVID.
Yeah.
And obviously I had a wee bit of a sample of my very first team talk for the B team was, I had like your Docherty's, your Ross McCrory's, Jordan Jones, Greg Stewart. I basically took the reserves, but were all the first reserves, if you know what I mean. I think the only player that maybe started that day was maybe Josh McBaker, Kai Kennedy, so it was literally a first team. Big Bassey played left centre back, so it was like having me on my training pitch, let's say on the Monday before we played Dundee United on the Tuesday, I was thinking, this is me, this is what I need. Then standing in the seminar, doing my team talk, presenting how the first team were playing to the first team players, getting feedback off the lads, because you were close enough and open enough to ask like what was good, what was bad, because listen, I'm learning, I want to learn off the top players, you know what I mean? Didn't just tell me that it was great just because you like Kevin Thomson. Be brutal with me, because I want to learn, I want to be the best. So I suppose I was a wee bit unlucky, but in hindsight, Stevie opened his door for me, Mick opened his door for me, and anything I really needed, they were at the end of the phone to try and help me. So I suppose getting that opportunity, I'll forever be thankful, really.
I think people maybe wondered, rightly or wrongly, and you can go into as much detail as you like here, and whether this is a fable or not, that you would potentially go down to Villa as part of his coaching staff, and then when Mick Beale, of course, rocks up at QPR, I think people maybe felt you may have ended up there.
Nah, it was just paper talk, to be fair. And listen, I'm pretty sure if I phoned the gaffer up and said, do you need a cleaner, or if you need
someone to keep his house,
somebody to give you some banter during the day, they'd never give me a job. But listen, that's just really where it stopped, really. Kind of like, I asked him if I could go down and spend a few days at Villa, obviously from a pro licence. He couldn't have been any more accommodating. He was brilliant. He treated us like kings.
Brilliant.
And I suppose if I was to do the same to Mick, I'm pretty sure that would be the same answer.
Yeah.
But I'm not naive to think that they've got 500 million people that could work for them. Do you know what I mean? So it's the relationship that I built up with them, in my opinion, is really good, and it's humbling on my part, because listen, they're a million miles further up the ladder than I could ever wish to be at the moment. Of course, I aspire to be as good as them, if no better, because that's just my personality. But nah, I think I suppose from I actually said it to somebody in the press last night, we've only ever really been offered 2 jobs, well 3 really, the Kelty job, and I took it. And I asked Dean to phone up Craig Mahon to do it the right way, because it's what I believe in. A lot of people think that everything's done underhand and it can be behind people's backs, but I quite like the fact of being different and being upfront. The Kelly one obviously come at Christmas time, and they obviously approached Kelty to speak. I went down and spoke to them, obviously missed out on it. Felt as though, to be fair, it would have been a good job for us. I felt like I could have got them promoted in the Championship.
Yep.
And then the Rafe job come when I was at Kelty. So I think it's probably, from my perspective, a lot of people say nae press isn't good and any press is good press, but I kind of sitting here a wee bit like 4 days a week off climbing the walls and see my name linked with every job, and jobs that I'm not actually going for, or applying for. And then the hindsight of that is, like, a lot of people that maybe didn't like Kevin Thomson for different clubs in the country are probably thinking that I'm going for all these jobs and not getting them, so I'm a bit of a dud. So it's like it's a kind of two-way street, I suppose. So it's if the phone goes tomorrow and it's right opportunity, we'll look at it, and if it's exciting, then I'll be 2 feet in and everything, because that's the way I am. But at the same time, I didn't just want a job for the boys, if you know what I mean. It's not the way I believe in. I'm quite happy to sit in the house and enjoy my family and enjoy doing KTA. And wait for the right opportunity. But it's Scotland, unfortunately, and I didn't mean that in a negative way, but you sometimes didn't feel like you get what you deserve, if you know what I mean. Because what we achieved at Kelty, without sounding big-headed, was unbelievable, really. 5th round of the Scottish Cup, 21 points clear. We won the league in March. We've only lost one game all season at home. I'm undefeated in the league all season at home. So it's like, we had a good budget. Of course we did, but no to the degree that some people would think. And I suppose I am showing my teeth a wee bit, I suppose, because I didn't feel as though we got the credit that we deserved. Me and my assistant, I'm a goalie coach, and all the staff and all the players, because I think people just have the perception that Kelty have got loads of money and they just buy their way to success. Whereas I'm pretty sure if you asked a lot of managers that got sacked last year that were well back, they would tell you it's quite difficult to win any title and be successful and put a good team on the pitch. Never mind just thinking that you've got a good budget and it's nice and easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I'm conscious of time, so what I do have, some of our guys in the group have given us some questions that I swore I would ask you. First one, who comes from one of our podders, Kyle McLean, and I'll quote him: "Given the absolute plethora," really, Kyle, for goodness sake, "given the absolute plethora of midfielders you've played alongside at Ibrox, who was your favourite and why?"
It's a question I get asked a lot, and I always try and be respectful of all the boys, because obviously played with some brilliant midfielders. It's an easy one because it's a midfielder, I suppose. Yes, in my opinion, Baz is the best Scottish midfielder in the last couple of decades, bar none. A wonderful player, brilliant captain, great teammate. Could do everything, Baz, really. But I had a soft spot for Pedro Mendes.
What a player!
What a player! Just done it on a live show for Boydie not that long ago. We called him Mr. Dolce & Gabbana. I think I was still wearing G-Star at the time, and Pedro started rocking him with Dolce & Gabbana. But I'm sure he was sponsored on it. We were spending our wages on it, and he was just rocking in sponsorship. He just was. I don't know why. I had a real soft spot for him because he carried himself with a bit of class. He was always meticulously dressed. He was a wonderful player. And just a great human being, and I just grabbed. And it's not that Baz wasn't he, or Steve Davis, or any other player that I played with, but he was my favourite that I played with at Rangers.
And never scored a shite goal.
Oh, incredible!
Never scored a shite goal.
I said to Jackson, my wee boy, my 12-year-old, he scored a goal at Hibs, or Sclaff one in the bottom corner, and he was like, "That's a great strike." I said, "See if you want to see a great strike." I said, "Go on to the YouTube." I said, "Have you seen Mendes strike?" I said, "That's a proper strike." I says, "Until you can hit in like that," I says, "Then he speak to me." And he was like, Mendes strike. What game was it? And I was like, 4-2. I says, "It was the Mendes show." I says, "Go on YouTube." I says, "I can't believe you never watched it, Jack," because he watches everything. He's got, and he come back downstairs and he was like, "Dad." And I said, "That's didn't come calling to Dad when you sclap one in the bottom corner against Aberdeen under 12s. I said, when you go to Celtic Park and you get one roll back off Steve Davis and you can laser one for 25 yards like an arrow in the bottom corner, then you can say you can strike a ball."
Yeah, some player, incredible. Shug Nibble in the group asks, if you could pick a Rangers 5-a-side team, who would you have in it?
Obviously Mendes.
Yeah.
Well, I'd want to win, so I'd need to be, my coaching head would need to come on. Griggsy easy in goals. Probably Whitty at the back because he can defend. He's got elastic legs. 5-a-side, the pitch is a bit tight, so he blocks shots, plus he can score goals. Mendes in midfield. Probably it's not a great balance, Baz and Mendes, because neither of them like to tackle, but I'd probably go Baz. So Griggsy, Whitty, Carlos Quella would be good in 5-a-side right enough. Whitty might need to get binned. So Whitty's a sub. Griggsy, Carlos Quella, all out defender. We need that with a balance.
Yeah.
And I'm going to. Boydie's the ultimate goal scorer that I played with, but I think he's not in the best shape now, Boydie, is he? So
he is not. He is not.
He's looking great, and he's top man. But I've seen him not long ago. He's put a couple of pounds on. He's got his back end the size of mine now. So I'll go with Kenny Miller, which would have been a toss of the coin between probably Nazy, who might be a wee bit more mobile and a wee bit more tenacious in 5-a-sides, but I'm going to go with Kenny because I think he maybe just edges it over Nazy. So I'll go Griggsy, Carlos Quella, Mendes, Ferguson, and Kenny Miller.
Oof, what a team that is. Goodness me. And saying that, if you saw the Masters a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if Miller and Ferguson gave each other a cuddle in the changing room after it, but I don't know if they'd be too impressed.
I'm not so sure. I didn't think Baz was pals with anyone. This thing, it was just Baz. Listen, but brilliant, top boy, but he never changes. The competitive instinct in him, he's just the way. And listen, Kenny's just as bad. If ever there was fireworks in training, Kenny and Baz wouldn't be far away from it.
I can quite imagine. Listen, we've only got 2 more questions to go, and I think the second last one is one that I think Rangers fans all around the world would probably want to know, and I think I know the answer from speaking to you tonight. Do you ever see yourself going back one day to manage the club if the opportunity comes up?
I think you sometimes get a hard. Listen, I know you didn't get a hard time off the Rangers fans, but I think people in football sometimes, listen, it's probably other clubs that you've maybe played for think that you will never want to be the Rangers manager. I just want to be the best manager I can possibly be. But
yeah,
I think sometimes even when you say it in black and white to people, they still didn't want to believe you. Because listen, I'm not going to be the Celtic manager. The likelihood is I'm maybe not going to get an opportunity to be the Hearts manager. I'd love to be a manager for anyone that wants me, as long as it's the right fit. But to me, like when I was a Hibs player, living my boyhood dream, I got an opportunity to go to Rangers, and financially it was better opportunities. It was playing in Europe, winning trophies. I didn't think anyone that knows football, whether you support Rangers, Celtic, Hibs or Hearts, could argue that I didn't make the right choice. So for me, I suppose in Scotland, if I'm going to get to the top of the game, minus the national manager, I would love to one day represent the club again, right at the top. And I feel I've got the right personality and the right characteristics to do that, but I'm also not naive to think that I'm a million miles away from it. And I genuinely put the Euro lottery on every Tuesday, Thursday when it gets to 200 million, and I've probably got no chance of winning. 50 million is not enough, by the way. It needs to be 200. So only when it's a quadruple rollover or whatever it is. But no, I mean it in the kind of utmost respect that I would love to be the manager one day, but I'm not naive to think there's a million other people want to be the manager as well. So so far I've made a good start. I think I'd like to think when a lot of people hear me talk about football and how I present myself, they appreciate the way I am. I didn't do it for anyone else apart from the way I want to perceive myself. But also know there's another million wonderful coaches and managers out there that would give the right arm to be a Rangers manager. So it might never happen. I might never get another opportunity. I took a risk when I left because I knew, and I genuinely had sleepless nights about it. I knew when I was taking the Kelty job, hence the reason why I took over a week to decide, that when I left to go to Middlesbrough, I never thought I'd get an opportunity to go back. I did. When I got back, I loved every minute of it. When I took the opportunity again to leave again, I knew driving out the gates for the last time that I might never get another opportunity to go back, which plays in your heartstrings a wee bit. But listen, you cannot live, and I never will live in the respect to regret and overthinking too many different scenarios. You just have to take the bull by the horns. If I was going to be the Rangers manager one day, I felt I had to leave the academy to step my own 2 feet, to put a team together, to try and win trophies, to try and build up my reputation within the game, playing for 3 points. And I have done that, but at the same time, I've done it at League Two. I know I've still got a long way to go. I'm learning all the time, but I'll give it my best shot.
And listen, last one in the interview, which I have to say has been absolutely fascinating for me, by the way. Kevin Thomson, in the current climate, what's happening with you? What are you doing?
I'm kind of on the dole. So if ever there's any more podcasts, give me a shout.
You're on. You'll only ask me twice, mate. You only asked me twice.
Obviously, I met Dave and Stevie actually on the gantry last night, and let's say the same to them. They're like, "What are you up to?" And I'm like, "Where's the next job?" And I've not got one. I said, "So any live nights, get me involved." I just have to be patient, I suppose, and it's not a good trait of mine. I feel a lot of people well. My assistant is obviously my brother-in-law as well. He's the kind of brains behind the operation at Kevin Thomson Academy. He kind of runs it all now, even though we do it together.
Yeah.
I'm there all the time. He kind of presents the sessions now with the kids and kind of runs them. I mean, like we kind of run about daft, if you know what I mean, together. But he organises everything when it comes to the actual description of the sessions now. And I feel a wee bit. I don't think I have, but I do. There's a wee bit at the back of my throat that kind of feel like I've let him down a wee bit, because obviously I'm sitting, I'm kind of enjoying a wee bit of time with the family. I enjoy my holidays. We've kind of 3 days a week. We only really work 12, 15 hours a week. And I know that he's desperate to get back in like I am, and I'm not saying that it would take a different opportunity than I would like, but I want the opportunity to come quick for the both of us, if that makes sense. It's not just, I'm not just a selfish one that I'm just making all these decisions for myself. I've got him to think about as well, and he means the world to me. Not just because he's my brother-in-law, he's also one of my best mates. We're kind of joined at the hip. So the decisions that I'm kind of making day to day are based on trying to make sure that he's all right as well, and everything's based on the both of us being looked after rather than obviously just one or the other. So I suppose life for me now is enjoying the kids, which I am, but at the same time I'm starting to climb the walls, and I didn't want to go through divorce because the missus kicks me out. I think she's kind of pining that I get a job as soon as possible, because
she's a patient woman.
I think she quite likes an empty house. So no, I just listen. I've got a smile on my face. The season's only kicking off. I'm hopeful that I'll get some opportunities. We obviously Rangers TV with different media outlets to do some games. I'll obviously cover a few games myself. I enjoy the academy. I enjoy watching my kids, which I've unfortunately not got to see really on a selfish note, because I've been that fixated on trying to be the best coach, best manager I can possibly be, probably to the sacrifice of getting to watch my own kids. But it's just the way I am. It's not that I love them to bits. It's unfortunately I was on a path and kind of narrow-minded to try and be the best I can be, which ultimately is for them in the future. But now I'll just enjoy my time really, and when any of you boys ever want to speak to me, then just pick up the phone.
I will definitely do that. No two ways about it. Listen, I've thoroughly enjoyed having you on. I appreciate your candidness over where you are now, your time at the club, your time with injury. I particularly, and I'm sure everyone will like hearing how passionately and how fondly you spoke about Walter Smith, who is the legend of all legends as far as Rangers fans are concerned, and rightly so. Kevin, I appreciate you coming on. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me anytime.